Welcome to Art Talk with April, Season 2. I'm April Harris of Inked April, located in Birmingham, Alabama. This season we'll be talking with new artists and professional expert artists. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to Art Talk with April. Today we have a very talented Aaryn Lee. She's an interdisciplinary artist. And Aaryn, where are you located at?
I'm currently located in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are you from Huntsville? Is that where you grew up?
No, I actually grew up in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I moved to Alabama in 2013.
So tell us about how you got started in art. Was it something that you were interested in as a child?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I was always very, very creative, like lost in my room in art.
Yeah.
As a kid. I was always making something as a kid, collages, drawings, everything like that. But it wasn't until high school, when I had a high school art teacher, that actually I realized that I could do art as a career. So that's when I really started to think about long-term, like being an artist professionally.
Yeah. I think I kind of felt the same way when it was like, I didn't really understand that it could be a career, until I got older. And then even then I was like, is this for real or?
Yeah. Like both of my parents are very creative people, but they don't work in the art field. So I remember making art with them growing up. They were always drawing or crafting. They always encouraged me to be an artist. They weren't professional artists. So I just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe it's supposed to be this parallel thing that you have in your life with a career that's not in the art field, but I never felt that that was right for me. So
yeah. Did your family have any artists around that they knew?
Not really. Not that I can think of. I mean, my parents were definitely talented. Growing up, our circles, my whole family, they were really into sports, like I'm an athlete in another part of my life. And, my family, they're all athletes. So that's kind of where our world existed.
Yeah. That's interesting. Did you go to college then after that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after high school, I went to college. I got my undergraduate from Portland State in art history with a studio concentration in printmaking, specifically intaglio printmaking.
I got you. Okay.
I was very fortunate that even though we didn't have artists in our family per se, my parents always encouraged me to go after my dreams. So, they supported my decision to study art.
Yeah, that's good. So you got your degree, and then, how did you continue going? Like, what happened?
Well,
did you get other jobs or?
My story is a little all over the place. So I became a single mom when I was in undergrad. So I was making art, and I've always made art. I've always had a pretty consistent practice, but I was making art at my house for many years after undergrad while raising my son. So during that time, I was working out of the art field and then like slowly building my own art practice.
Yeah.
Trying to survive as a single mom and stuff. But at a certain point, I moved here in 2013. And, I had little shows here and there, like maybe in a coffee shop or a group show or something like that. Yeah. And, I'd sell a piece here and there, but I really felt empty because I was working in the medical field, and it wasn't satisfying to me. It wasn't what my path, like I knew my path was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I decided, actually in 2017 or 2018, I applied to Lowe Mill.
Okay.
And I got accepted, and I opened my studio. And that definitely was life-changing for me to finally have a public studio and be around artists all the time and just really put myself out there. And so that was life-changing. And then in 2019, before the pandemic, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And he's okay now. He's in remission. He's great. But during that time, he, you know, confided in me that he had cancer. And, you know, he told me, you know, he really, and at the time I was thinking about going back to graduate school, and he was like, Aaryn, go after it, aim high. Like, this is your life. Do what you have to do, you know? So I applied to graduate school and got accepted, and it kind of put things in motion for me. So so I have my MFA now in visual art from Lesley University, and things are really starting to take off for me, and it's great.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. I mean, I'm so sorry that your dad had cancer and everything, and it's great that he's doing well. And so, but to be told something like that, I feel like, wow, that would, and then you're in Lowe Mills. Like, I haven't actually been there.
Oh, you gotta check it out.
What is it like? Like, do you guys have like studio windows that people can see into?
Yeah, it's really, so Lowe Mill, for those that aren't familiar with it, is an old factory, textile factory that has been converted into artist studios, galleries, restaurants. There's, you know, venue like a theater and all sorts of shops. So it's a public facility. So during, you know, artists are to be there during public hours, but we have 24-hour access, which is great. But each studio has a window. It's like a hallway with studios, and there's windows. So you, as you're just walking through the building, you can just look inside every single studio and see what artists are doing. And the doors are always, you know, are open, so you can go in and talk to the artists. You know, so some people treat their studio like a storefront, some treat it as a working space. So there's a good mix of ways we're using their studios.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, how are you using your studio? Are you using it as a working space, or? Yeah,
it's mostly for me a working space. You know, I do have work for sale in the studio, and I'll do like studio visits. So if people want to buy work and they want to see work, they can come to the studio. But for me, the most life-changing part about getting into Lowe Mill for me was treating my practice as job, but not in a bad sense. When I had a home studio, as a single mom, I would walk down the hall, look in the studio, and be like, I really need to work. And then I would see the dishes in the sink or the laundry that needed to get folded. And I would say, okay, I can't work until I get these priorities done, because nobody else is going to do them. My son, you know, he's like 7 or something. He's not going to, you know, so So
gotcha.
being able to say, okay, I'm going to go work. I'm going to go spend 2 hours in the studio. I have to physically drive there. I mean, I'm going to get there and actually work. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've never had a studio outside my home. Like, I've always had, you know, my own space to create in and close the doors kind of thing. But even that isn't really all that separated from the rest of life, you know? And I could imagine actually like packing up and going someplace and focusing. I mean, do you feel like it really gives you like a like better work and more work that you're getting done?
I do think that for me, and now everybody is different. For me, I feel more productive being away from the home. And I also, there's like this energy at Lowe Mill. So, you know, you walk in and you walk through the doors, and well, the door that I walk through every day, goes straight into one of the main galleries. So I'm seeing art, you know, there's people there working. If I'm lacking inspiration or I'm just not feeling it, I can just walk around and say hi to my, you know, studio neighbors and see what they're doing, and then kind of generate some sort of, inspiration or to say, oh, they're working. So like, I need to get back to my studio and work now, but it's really great. Now, the downside though, is I have most of my art supplies at my studio. So if I'm at home and I have this like great idea come up, now I have to leave the house. I don't have a lot of stuff here. I might have like sketchbooks, some paper, so I don't know. That's the downside, is not having anything right at my fingertips when I need it.
Well, like one of the things that I always do, especially when I'm in moments where there's absolutely no way I could stop everything and like start painting or whatever, I have like little notebooks around the house, and I'll just write down, and I'll like draw a little picture and put some notes next to it. Like, okay, this is what this is,
Yeah.
It's like little thumbnails. Okay, this is what I want to remember. And
yeah. I've gotten really good at using my note app on my phone.
Oh yeah,
that's like you can draw on the notes now. So
yeah,
I use that a lot too.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because then that's even more accessible, I guess, than you would have that with you. So tell us about your art. Like, how did you come to this medium, and then also, what's your direction with your art? What are you thinking about, your vision?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I didn't really have a voice in what I was creating. I just drew a lot of portraits, a lot of self-portraits. I, like any young artist, not copied, but was inspired by other artists. So I would try their styles. But I wasn't really sure what I was making. I knew I wanted to make. And then while I was doing that, I was always making collages. But I didn't look at the collage work that I was doing as like anything serious. It was just something to keep my hands busy.
Yeah.
And when I was studying at undergrad, I really fell in love with intaglio printmaking because of how it's just very process heavy. You have all these steps that you have to follow, and I really appreciate having to go through something that has all these steps, and it's not just drawing a picture. Not saying that there's a lot to drawing a picture, but I like the physicality of it. Using your body when you're working. And I didn't realize until more recently that physicality in printmaking is really what I loved about printmaking. It wasn't necessarily the actual outcome.
Yeah.
And so as I've shifted, I started realizing a lot of the work when I was younger, in my 20s, was I was making it because I thought that's what people wanted me to make. And so at a certain point in my early 30s, I said, you know what? I am just going to make. I just got in the studio, and I was so fed up with not knowing what I needed to be doing and not wanting to make work for other people. And I just said, you know what? I'm throwing all this out. I'm just going to start playing with paper just to because that's what I'd done for years and years, was all these collages. So I started playing with all these tissue papers, and it really turned into something for me. So that's when I started really working in abstraction, and it kind of generated this path that I'm on now, where it's more about, when I make art, it's more about the process of it, the physicality of it, the material, and the gesture, and the mark making and the experimentation. So that's where the practice kind of is focused around. And then there's themes, because I was making this work, and then I felt like, okay, this feels true to me.
Yeah.
There's something here, and I'm not really sure what it is, but I feel like I need to explore it. So I started thinking, okay, my body and my subconscious mind keep creating this work. What is it trying to tell me? So that's when I started to and this was kind of early in my MFA program, I started thinking about what it was telling me and why my body kept repeating these, I was making a lot of the same marks with different mediums. And you can see that in like my work, especially my work now, where I'm doing a lot of like tally marks and stuff like, and just like these quick expressive gestures. And so I started thinking about what that was. And I also wanted to, the work seemed important to me, but it seemed shallow. Like it seemed like it was like superficial, and I needed to figure out the deeper side of it, So I started investigating various themes in the work that are related to my experiences. And that I started thinking about my experience with domestic violence and addiction. And I had body dysmorphia my entire life. Had eating disorders, growing up in my teens and 20s. So I felt like those were things that my subconscious mind kept pinging me in the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Have you read that?
I have seen it. I have been recommended that.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. And in it, it talks about how we hold our trauma and our memories in our body. Yeah. And I think that's why I really love work where I can use my physical body, like very expressive gestures, process where I have to go through this repetitive action. Sure. And I think that's one reason is like I'm attempting to rewire all these memories. So, yeah.
That is super interesting. Oh my gosh. Because I think about, I can't help but when talking to other artists, kind of think about my own process. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've always had this obsession with like texture and hatch mark making.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? I don't know. It's like I like other people's art where they're doing that, where they're making marks. Yeah. And for some reason, that's way more interesting to me than like maybe something that's super realistic, or even like photography or whatever. I mean, I love all those things, but for some reason I'm drawn to that kind of work. Do you feel that way? That like, you're inspired by other artists that have those same kind of...
Yeah, I feel like I'm inspired by a lot of different artists. I have a tendency to be drawn towards like the gritty, imperfect type of art.
Yeah.
And then as I feel like with that repetitive motion, it's like it's almost this meditative experience that you get into while you're making these marks. I'm really inspired by Yayoi Kusama.
Yeah.
And just like, she's like amazing. She's in her 90s and still works. But she has a lot of trauma in her life from her childhood. And being an artist in the 60s, I'm sure she had her fair share of experimentation. And she creates these, pieces that have these repetitive dots over and over and over again. And there's just something about that to me. She said, I don't remember the exact quote, but she said her art was a way for her to heal, basically. And I've kind of always treated my art as that as well. Even when I was a young kid, if I was in trouble, I'm going to my room and I'm drawing, so, but she had her infinity mirrors exhibition at the High Museum in Atlanta, like 4 or so years ago. And I went to that and it was mind blowing. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think I saw that like advertised and I really wanted to go. I was like, oh, that looks awesome. So that's great.
yeah.
I think, what you're saying too about art being healing, I found that I think pretty much with everyone I've talked to that seems to come up. Like it's something that just helps you express whatever is on the inside. And I just got done talking with another artist and she was like, she just draws these intuitive drawings. Like she just starts basically doodling and things just come out, and then like you're saying, it's this motion and the repetitiveness that feels so meditative and healing. So that's amazing. I think that that's something that a lot of artists really connect with too. And so you're taking this abstraction and these sort of, to me, it's like this textural kind of art. And what are you doing with it now? Are you like represented by any galleries? Are you in shows? What are you doing as far as?
So I just finished, I defended my thesis this summer and past that. So I'm really excited to start getting into more work that's post MFA, because a lot of the stuff I've been making the last couple of years has been geared towards that. I don't have gallery representation at the moment. I just installed yesterday a solo show at the University of Alabama in Huntsville in the Salmon Gallery. I'm also an adjunct professor at UAH. Okay. So I've been teaching there the last year and the semester starts next week, but I teach drawing foundations.
Oh, okay.
So that's really great to be in education. Yeah. I love, it's interesting because the students that I teach are mostly engineering students. That's what UAH is, they have a small part, it's known for engineering, the school is. So it's really interesting to inspire these students that don't think they can draw, and then they draw and they draw well. And I love that. But in terms of my practice, during my MFA journey, I realized that I kept trying to put a label on myself of what type of artist I am, and nothing ever truly fit. I felt like a lot of times artists are encouraged to specialize and be an oil painter or be a printmaker or a sculptor. And I'm just, my mind doesn't think in one discipline. Yeah. And I felt that during that program, I really embraced interdisciplinary art, and just like that title, like it gave me the freedom to make art however I needed to. If I'm trying to tell a story or an experience, I can pick the discipline that I feel is best for that. So during that time, during the MFA program, I started doing some performance and projections and time-based media, which I thought was really great for the things that I was concerned with. When I'm using my body and I'm going through this repetitive motion, I started a lot of the stuff that I've been making. I like to see how far I can push things. So how far I can push the additive or the subtractive in the work. But sometimes the work, can't the substrate can't withstand like that repetitive process. So I started filming as a way to document it, essentially. Yeah. And so I'm really excited to start working on these different projects in the future. I have a solo show at Gadsden Museum in December.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I have a show scheduled for next year at Lowe Mill. So I have, these shows that I'm working towards. So I'm really excited to start working on those.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's like one of those things where it gives you sort of a goal to think about, okay, I need to have stuff ready for this. And then the excitement of getting out of the MFA and being able to just sort of cut loose and try all the things. Oh my God, how fun is that?
Yeah.
That was so exciting.
And I'm really, for my thesis for at Lesley University. Our thesis show was a group show. So, I only put a couple pieces in it, but I made a lot of work this last year.
Yeah.
And so UAH contacted me and said, hey, would you like to show your thesis work for, in the Salmon Gallery? And I was like, yeah, this is great. Now I have a place where I can put more of it, together. Because even though a lot of the pieces I made were independent, they really go well together. So that was really nice. And it was kind of it gave me a little bit of closure installing that show yesterday, because I put them in this space finally, together. Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, now, because I think for the December show, I was thinking, how can I fit these pieces? But now I don't have to even worry about that. So
yeah. How many pieces are in the show?
In the UAH show?
Yeah.
Let's see. 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good fit.
Yeah. So I have pretty much everything is either like a piece on panel or, it's 2-dimensional marks that I've made. There's one piece that is my tally bowl, which was this performance that I did where I started with a bowl and an oil stick. And as I was like hovering over the bowl and making these tally marks in the bowl. And each time I created a set of tallies, I would turn the bowl, and it was like this very repetitive motion. So mark, 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 turn, mark, 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 turn. And it was at the end when I filled the bowl with the tallies, I put the oil stick in the bowl, covered it with the tissue paper, which in and out of my work for years. Yeah. And then that was the performance. So it was like this bowl is this empty bowl that I'm filling with these tallies. So the bowl's now it's not only empty, it's full. And these tallies are it's like a record of my memories, but it's also a record of tendencies or these compulsions that I've had, especially with like eating disorders. And I was bulimic and anorexic for a long time, and I'm good now. Yay. But, I was just kind of this record. And the crazy thing about the tally bowl, I love the piece. The video there's like this kind of noise where it's like this repetitive, you can just hear the shifting of the bowl. Yeah. When I shipped the tally bowl to Lesley for the thesis show, I get this phone call, and it's my friend Kelly, and she goes, Aaryn, don't get upset, but your tally bowl broke in transit. And I go, I think it was supposed to break. Like it was like the piece was finished. The cycle was finished. So it was kind of great. Oh, so wow. That's in the show. I mean, the students at UAH going through the gallery, they're probably like, what is that? I'm like, that piece is important to me, and it's in the show.
Wow. So in the show, do you have the video or anything like that?
No, but it's on my website. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, love that. That's so awesome. And it's one of those things where almost like, the life of the bowl signifies so very much to you. And then it still wasn't finished when it left.
I know.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I fully embraced that. But then I also was like, okay, I need to get better at packing art because I clearly don't know how to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can see that. That's one of my fears is like sending art out to people. I'm like, let me know if it doesn't make it, especially a one of a kind thing like that. It's like, oh, okay. I hope this gets there safely.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you, Aaryn, so much for talking to me today. And I mean, your work is amazing. I just love what you're doing. And I'm so excited for you to be on this new adventure. So it'll be cool to see where you go, what you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm excited. So awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Art Talk with April. For more information on this episode, join the Facebook group, The Art Lounge. Please subscribe and share. See you next Tuesday. Hope you have a great week.